moving on to no action items. No action items include any personnel evaluation, information only item, executive session item, or any other item where council direction is sought, but no formal city council action will occur. Public comment or testimony is not permitted during this section of the meeting. First up is 8.1, City Manager's Office, Rod Winsing, Emergency Unauthorized Encampment Ban Update. Welcome, Rod.
Madam Mayor, Council, good evening. We're just kind of assembling here. Give us a moment.
Okay. Well, welcome.
Where's our power rings or something, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, there she is. We'll have to pull up another chair. We just pull up another chair. And we won't fit in here.
Okay.
We should have requested another table from our friends from the clerk's office. But we will be cozy. We're all friends here. So once again, Rod Winsing, Deputy City Manager, we're going to give the council an encampment update. We were last here before you in July, late July. And so with that, I'll have my colleagues to the right introduce themselves. We'll have to share microphones, everybody.
Good evening, Mayor and members of Council. Elizabeth Kale, Parks and Recreation Director.
Brian Waldes, Chief Financial Officer.
Allison Haid, Community Partnership Office.
Mark Jackson, Public Works Director.
As we normally do, I'll have to speak into this. As we normally do, we're going to kind of go through this. Each one of us have some slides that we're going to talk to you about tonight. Please hold your questions to the end of the presentation. Appreciate that from City Council. We're going to talk about kind of why we're here, give you a little bit of perspective from our July 26th update, where we're going, some removal from encampment removal milestones, shelter updates, budget, and what's next. And of course, we'll have time for questions on this particular topic. Trying to fit everything here. So as council knows, May 17th, let me keep up with this. There we go. We had the emergency ordinance that council passed, which began our journey on this particular path. Direction at the time from City Council was to support local businesses in the Kings Crossing area. Wanted us to move quickly, but still stay within the guidance of Martin versus Boise, and of course include resource navigation for campers. The July 26 update, as you can see, we talked with council about shelter options. We talked about encampment removal and enforcement. And we were continuing to really focus, and we got direction from City Council to continue to focus on Kings Crossing and also set up the South Railroad site with a tent modular option. Whoops. I think I'm here. One of the things we talked with council about was really two paths here, the shelter path and also the move on or enforcement piece, if you will. And when we have people on both paths now that we talked about, for the most part, we have, most people are on the green side for us. You know, they've accepted shelter. We've moved them out of Kings Crossing. The south side of Kings Crossing, all the encampments have originally been moved out of there. It's closed to the public. and restoration is beginning in those particular areas, if you will. We do have people that on these two paths, as we talked before, we knew we were going to have people on both paths, and we have people, campers that have been cited, and they are on the municipal court path from that standpoint. And there's a process on that municipal court path, and they'll work their way through that within our system. And kind of where we are now, since we activated our incident command piece, we've been working on the Kings Crossing area. We've been doing a weekly camp cadence, if you will, of cleanups and notice. We've activated our Loveland Resource Center. We've continued to keep the public informed on a weekly basis. And so many of our initial milestones, which is the focus on Kings Crossing, the focus on Fairgrounds Park, and the focus on the trails areas, we've made great progress. And that's the feedback that we're getting from the public, is that there has been progress made. We're still working, if you will, but we are kind of starting, as it says in the bottom, we're starting to get to that point when we're starting to transition, if you will, we would call like the emergency phase, where we had all the issues that we needed to address, and we're starting to move now into more of a kind of a maintenance phase, if you will, or a more management phase of this, because I think it's safe to say that we will be managing now, actively managing our homeless encampment situation. And we're going to have to continue to manage that, because as we have, even during this time, we have people that we have removed, if you will, from initially removed, and they're starting to work their way back in to our open lands. And we're going to have to continue to manage that. And we monitor that. We get information from citizens, city council members that they hear from their constituents, and we follow up on all of those issues that we hear from that standpoint. But I think it's really important to have the conversation that we're going to have to continually manage this going forward. It's not going to be at zero. There's always going to be situations that we're going to have to address. One of the timelines that I want to point out here is, just kind of, I like to point out kind of the where we are sticker in the process and the timeline that we've went along, if you will. It's kind of you are here. And so I really kind of want to, you can certainly read this slide, but I really want to kind of look at the top lines, if you will. Planning, preparation for full enforcement. We're now really in full enforcement mode, because we have places, if you will, at the LRC with the activation of the 4 humanitarian tents in the back, plus people inside the building. We have 40 places for people on a nightly basis. And so we really have a place now for people to go. So we're really in the full enforcement mode. The transitional shelter, as we talked about before with the motels, we told you that was a temporary quick fix. We are in the process of rotating out of that program now. We're just down to a handful of people that we're currently housing, and it really is focused on people that have ADA accessible issues that we're dealing with. We also have a very ill person that we're dealing with. So it's those kinds of pieces that we're still working our way through, but that program really is winding down. The Loveland Resource Center is up and running in a very robust way. That'll get talked about later. And we're also into restoration. Starting with Kings Crossing, we'll also, as we clean other areas up, that where there has been damage, we'll do restoration in those areas too, and we'll talk about that too. So with that, I will turn it over to Elizabeth.
Thank you, Rod. And Mayor, members of council, as a reminder, I've been charged with the leadership role of enforcement, cleanup, and outreach. And so that's my role on this important endeavor that we're on this journey together. I have 2 slides here. I'd like to have you pay attention first to the slide number 8 here, which is encampment removal. We've had a lot of very significant progress in the removal of encampments, primarily addressing, as you know, and as Rod reminded us, of King's Crossing. Knowing that once we got to a stage where we were cleared of encampments, we could then begin on mitigation and restoration. What we're finding is some of those individuals that were removed from King's Crossing are now taking advantage of shelter and services, and so that's a wonderful thing. Others have chosen to relocate to other areas, which we also knew would happen, and it seems the area of choice right now is Cottonwood Run, both north and south side of the properties. It's important to remind you that these numbers that you're seeing on the slide tonight are a snapshot in time. When this slide presentation was put together, these were the numbers. Of course, we're looking at October 21st or so, and I have, there's been some updates because we know that we continue to clean up encampments. We continue to see folks move along. We also continue to see new folks come to the area. So we're always tracking numbers that are ever changing. The latest, greatest numbers, luckily, you get updates every single week in a packet from Rod. Thank you so much for sending that out. That will give you up-to-date numbers from that particular week, including encampments removed, total campers that have been moved since we started this initiative, the number of citations, the average number of people served at the LRC, et cetera. So you are given up-to-date numbers. The only number that's really different on this particular slide would be we have now removed 75 versus 73 encampments. And the number 9 there on remaining camps, that was as of October 21st, and so that number fluctuates quite a bit. As of 10/28, we removed an active encampment off of the north side of Cottonwood Run. We removed an abandoned site off of the north side of Cottonwood Run. We removed debris from former encampments off of the south side. However, 3 new campers have been reported. Encampments have been reported. So on the north side. So again, fluctuating numbers, but we feel very, very pleased with the progress that we're making on the encampment removals. Unfortunately, I don't have Sergeant Osilka here tonight to talk about enforcement, but I know Chief Stewart is here. And so if you have any specific questions about enforcement, he'd probably be the best one to address that. One of the things I'm most excited about is the restoration of King's Crossing. A lot of significant damage had been done to the natural state of that area. And so we first wanted to address the reason, of course, for your emergency ordinance was about fire mitigation. We didn't want to see another large, Marshall fire happening in Loveland, and so it was really important that LFRA was involved in a risk management and fire risk assessment, which they have done of King's Crossing, and they started that in the beginning of October. LFRA continues to work closely with My Open Lands and Trails staff on an as-needed basis to go in and check out any assessment that needs to be done for fire risk. We're excited about the fact that starting on this month, on the 14th, we will begin reseeding of the whole Kings Crossing natural area. And this was a contract that was bid out, so it's not our internal staff that's doing this, but we have professional folks that do this type of work that will be going in and starting that reseeding again on the 14th. The important thing about the restoration is we want to not only deal with the natural foliage, but we also have to pay close attention to the river itself, and it's in the river banks, the soils, the plant life, any potential damage or erosion that's happened, wildlife habitat. We're starting to see birds come back to the area and small animals come back to the area which had left. And of course, any bio waste that could get into the Big Thompson River that affecting its quality. That's really important to us as well. The Open Lands Division is working to ensure this restoration is done. We need to have the seeding done this month to ensure that we'll have the growth time necessary for it to be successful. But we're seeing great progress, and so that concludes my report from encampment and restoration perspective.
You'll be my slide guy. Thank you. As you know, we have a large team working on the encampment issue, and the Community Partnership Office throughout all of this has had our eye primarily on the homeless response aspect of it, along with our partners, Homeward Alliance. So to date, we have hired 7 full-time shelter coordinators, 2 part-time coordinators, a lead to make sure that they have somebody on site who can work on the really tough issues and provide direction. And we have a shelter manager who will be starting on the 14th. Our goal is really to create stability and a consistent place and atmosphere where people can go to get resources. So the LRC, our staff offers just some pretty basic services of shower and laundry, mail. We don't have any computers available for people at this point, but we will at some point. And we make sure that our partners are available to them as well so that they can produce the result that we're really after, which is housing. So listed on this slide are the partners who are at the Loveland Resource Center on a regular basis. Homeward Alliance and Summit Stone Health Partners are there every day. The rest of them are there probably a half a day, 1 day a week, or as needed. Councillor Ball, a few meetings ago, made a point of saying that we want to make sure that it isn't the City of Loveland and it isn't just Homeward Alliance that are producing these resources. So Homeward Alliance, as our lead agency, has made a great effort to have our other partners step up and take a role in each of the outcomes that we're working to produce. And this gives you a sense of who's on board so far. Next slide. So we've been pretty pleased with the results so far. It takes quite a while to build a trusting relationship with someone who both has been living outside for a while, but then somebody who also is now told, well, you can't sleep here and you can't go here. So a lot of lives have been disrupted, rightfully so. That's what we had to do. And so on our end, we've had to look at, okay, how do we create an environment where people want to go, and what will having that environment produce for the City of Loveland? We believe that what it'll produce is an opportunity for people to end their homelessness and find the resources that they need. So these numbers were through October 22nd, as you can see. The first number of 273 unduplicated people having used the Loveland Resource Center is much higher than I would have expected. I saw these numbers. Homeward Alliance got these numbers for us through our use of what's called the Homeless Management Information System, but that's not a system that I have access to at this point. That number I expect to remain stable-ish, but kind of go down, because we do know that some people who are living in encampments have actually left the area. We know of several. The number of 158 unduplicated people just this month shows that people are actively using this as a source for resources, to get resources. And actually last week alone, it was 109 people. So just last week, a significant number of people went to the Loveland Resource Center. Average daily was 39. This last week it went up to 55. And then the overnight service has grown considerably. When we first started out, we weren't surprised that it was 5 people a night, 6 people a night, maybe 8. This week we've had several nights where it's been 37. We are almost at capacity with 40 beds and trying to figure out what happens. What do we do now when we have a storm on Thursday night if the Loveland Resource Center gets full? So we're working on that. We also have a little bit of information here about what we're doing and some numbers produced. I don't think that the numbers really are, I don't think they're quite accurate. Some of them are word of mouth, and we're just really trying to find a way to enter these numbers. So when we come back at some later date, we'll have better information. But working to help people get jobs, we're working on relocating people if they want to go back to their family members, and as we said, connecting to resources. Our ultimate goal is really housing. In fact, there were 2 people who got housed last week. Next slide. And I really wanted to show you some of the numbers of the Northern Colorado continuum of care, because I know that there's a lot of discussion around whether or not people actually want housing. And I think it's important to show that of all of the people who have approached a service provider in Northern Colorado, Larimer and Weld County, 1,340 have been housed. For a while, and for the last couple of months, I've been saying that number was 1,544. And so for some people who have paid attention to what I'd said, they might wonder why that number went down. We've housed some people out of state, and those numbers are no longer on this list. These are just people who have remained in Larimer and Weld County. But what you can see from that is that of all of the people who have said, I'm ready for housing, 75% have been housed. So our goal next is to make sure that we have on those lists even the people who don't want housing, so that we can show that our numbers are accurate. So this is the goal that we're working toward. Is this one you? I think it is.
Okay, good evening. Our Public Works team has been tasked with the logistics element of this exercise, of this effort. And what that basically has focused on is primarily site preparation and procurement of what's needed to set the South Railroad site up. We've also offered support services to the fire mitigation and restoration in terms of debris removal. We've been actually working on 2 fronts lately, because we knew that because of supply chain issues and just the time it takes to get through permitting processes and everything, that it was going to be later than we had anticipated to stand up the South Railroad site. Where initially we thought we could fast track some things, just supply chain issues made that impossible. What that meant was that we knew that we had to bolster up the LRC, the Loveland Resource Center, and so we've been spending a great deal of time at that site, clearing the back of the site, making room for 4 of the FEMA emergency tents that we showed you last time. We built subfloors for them. There are beds within them, and knowing that the weather was going to turn last week, we literally moved heaven and earth to get the heating units in place in time and get those set up and operational. So we're very proud of that. So as Allison said, there's 20 indoor spaces at LRC currently. We also have 4 tents and 20 beds, so 5 tents per bed, if you will, behind the LRC. Just talked about the HVAC units, and Allison has reported, we're actually I'm surprised at how much they were going to get used. There was a time when we were thinking, are we overthinking this a little bit? And that doesn't seem to be the case. Next slide, please. The other major effort that's underway is site preparation for the South Railroad site. This was always intended to be the primary interim shelter location, if you will. And so the site preparation has been taking place throughout the summer. You've all seen that. You heard the reports. The site is pretty much ready to go, with a few exceptions. So we have 6 tents and under the flooring units. We also have beds, frames, mattresses all ready to go. Then we have those in-house. The showers and the bathroom trailers and the modulars are ordered. We anticipate that the bathroom and the modular units could be here as soon as this week. I've stopped promising deadlines, but we think that it's imminent. The rest are the shower units actually, however, are built to order, and we think that's probably going to be another few weeks out. We still are hopeful that we may be able to stand the site up by the end of November. Right now, you'll see activity beginning. It may have even begun today. I didn't get a chance to get out there. But they'll start doing the privacy screening around the entire 360 perimeter of South Railroad. We are working with our friends in Water and Power for a transformer placement on the site that's being finalized. Basically, that will give us the necessary power for the electricity to the trailers, modular units, and the heating cooling units. We also have ordered an emergency whisper generator if needed for backup. One of my facilities leads, he's my Radar O'Reilly. I think he can find anything, and it's been pretty amazing to watch them mobilize on this. Given the other, probably the other interesting wrinkle with this is given the immediate success at LRC and the willingness to use the tents, we are actually looking at appropriating an additional 2 tents on that. There's plenty of room on the site. We're working on amending the permit application of the site planning so that if we do need to grow into that, we can, and we're trying to get ahead of that with the procurement process right now.
Good evening. Since the beginning of this effort, Finance's role has been to attend the meetings, make sure that we are accurately tracking all the expenses and using that information to forecast out what future needs would be for funding in this area. This first slide here is showing what we spent through September, which was the data we used to project the appropriation amount that we're anticipating council's approval for with the year-end wrap-up appropriations that you'll see at our next regular meeting. So what this pie chart shows is the different categories of expenditures for the program, and these are the categories we used, again, to forecast forward what we think we're going to need for the rest of the year. Through the end of December, we had spent $387,000. We understood that there were other encumbrances on funds there, so we knew we were going to go through the entire $500,000 that was appropriated at the beginning of the program. So on the next slide, we use that information we had in the pie chart, and also talking with our fellow members of the response team in Public Works, and also with Allison, to understand what the needs are going to be going forward. So you'll see, as we go forward, the need for motel rooms, for example, goes down because we're anticipating not using that measure to house people as much as we were at the beginning of the program. Yes, but the cleanup goes up. So that also anticipates that we will have moved people out of areas like Kings Crossing, and then we'll be able to do more cleanup there. So again, it wasn't just, using kind of a prorated formula to arrive at this number for the additional appropriation. We also spoke with our teammates to understand, what was upcoming. That I think explains the additional need for funds going through year end. And then council will recall, we have appropriated $1.25 million in the 2023 budget, and that, of course, is for the entirety of 2023.
Okay.
Brian, I think the number there is the 389,965. Brian, can you talk about that number?
I'm sorry?
The 389,965?
The 389 is the future appropriation amount. So that would be in addition to the $500,000 that we've already appropriated, using the information that we had at hand, and these different categories of expenditures, we feel we will need to appropriate an additional $389,965 to get us through year-end 2022.
And that's going to be in the year end?
Yes, that will be for approval with year-end wrap-up.
Okay.
Just a few more slides. So I mentioned this before, and we have a few slides about this, is talking about, as we kind of move out of the emergency phase and more to kind of the management, if you will, of this, we're really at this particular point, we're down to very large, hidden encampments that we're finding, if you will. And it takes a little bit longer to remove those. And we purposely did that. As you remember, we talked about, we just kind of start with the smaller, more compliant, if you will, but knew we were eventually going to get to this piece. And certainly in this area really is where the police department and their work with citations, those kinds of things, and the path for people to go down the municipal court route based on those summonses. That's really kind of where we're at in those areas. And of course, working, as Mark said, standing at the South Railroad site, we just, as you know, yesterday we pushed out some information to citizens that came to our town hall at the Rialto that we had. Got some information out to them, kind of what they're going to be seeing on the site. We wanted to do that because it's been kind of quiet out there for several months, and especially with the screening going up, we wanted to let them know they're going to start seeing changes in that particular area. And then the next one is kind of, there we go. So then, I mentioned this about before about kind of maintenance mode, those kinds of things. Really it's about restoration, continuing with encampment enforcement, certainly the day shelter at the LRC, and then continuing to communicate and public outreach from our standpoint. With that, that's our last formal slide, and Madam Mayor, we're happy to take questions.
Okay, Councilor Olson?
Thank you, Mayor. First off, regarding the showers, have you contacted FEMA to see if we might borrow some of their showers? Every disaster I was on with the Red Cross, FEMA provided the showers for all the volunteers.
I don't know for certain that they did. My understanding is that they went, we were directed to get this fast and go directly to vendors. Yeah. So that's the approach we've taken. I don't know if FEMA was a stop in that chain.
Well, just a suggestion. Hurricane might be over, so there might be some showers available. A couple other questions on slide 5, if you don't mind going to that. So reflecting back on the comment by, I guess it's Pastor Hubbard, regarding the churches wanting to offer their parking lots for the homeless to camp. It seems to me, and maybe you got a different take on this, that's going to complicate what we're trying to do, and that's plug people into the services. The bottom line there is, the purpose of this is to get them connected with services to help them get out of homelessness. And my fear is that churches are going to provide, just give stuff, and there's not going to be that connection. So if you had any contact with churches regarding the idea of parking, you're using their parking lots?
Yeah, so this is a project that's been discussed for many years, and you'll be pleased to know that the 137 MASH team is taking the lead. So they are working with local churches because they have great connections, and the goal will be to use their parking lots to let people sleep in their vehicles. One of the things that the House of Neighborly Services has seen recently is quite a good number of seniors who have lost their housing and they're living in their vehicles, and it's incredibly concerning. So their original goal is to make sure that people who are sleeping in their cars, especially the seniors, have a place to go where they're safe at night, because they really can't park on City of Loveland streets and remain undisturbed. So the 137 MASH team is heading this up. They'll work with local churches, and they're creating a list of resources to get people rehoused. So the goal remains the same, of getting people housed or rehoused, regardless of whether or not they're staying at a church or the Loveland Resource Center.
Okay, great. Good to hear. Going to your slide on the house since 2016. So that, from your discussion, I understand that's Weldon and Larimer County. And if you can go to that.
One more.
So looking at the, particularly the youth, how many of those, it says 16 waiting, is that for both counties?
It is. So youth in this example is 18 to 24. We can't house people who are under 18. So these aren't necessarily McKinney-Vento youth.
Okay.
They are young people who are also homeless.
That's the direction I was going, because the numbers don't match.
Right, right. I mean, there might be one, might be two, and we know that the youth are especially vulnerable, and they hide more. It's much more difficult to locate youth.
You don't address it, at least that I saw in your slides. Are we working with the schools to identify those youth that are truly homeless, not just fall within the McKinney-Vento
Right.
category?
Yes and no. So that falls into the youth and the family lines right here. And that's been a conversation that the Community Partnership Office has been having with Family Promise, with Family Housing Network, with Thompson School District for quite a few years. How do we identify families that truly need either shelter, which we don't have for families in Loveland. We don't have a shelter program for families. We do have a program. And to make sure that they get rehoused. So I heard recently that the Thompson School District is altering how they count their families. So it used to be that once you were identified as McKinney-Vento at any point in the year, they would gather those numbers throughout the year, and then they would have a cumulative total. But now they're working on not only doing that, but that's what they have to report to the federal government, but doing not only that, but better understanding the number of people who have exited that system, who are now sufficiently housed, who have self-corrected, so that they have a better sense of the number of people who actually do need housing. And I think that that will help us along the way. It's still been a tough nut to crack. We can't, for example, one way that we used to find youth would be through the annual point-in-time count, but there are actually laws in Colorado that don't allow us to go to any one of our campuses to talk with homeless youth. So they've purposefully put up a barrier so that youth can remain safe, but it also makes it more difficult to reach them.
Have we been working with those youth that age out of foster care? Is that part of what we're working with the schools on?
And the Matthews House, and they are a great partner in this arena, and they're looking at a youth shelter for Loveland, or actually it's for the area, but could physically be in Loveland, and that's an incredible partner to take the lead on it, because they have access to youth who are aging out of foster care.
Okay, thank
So
you.
they're connected really well.
Yeah, good, thanks.
All right, Counselor Sampson.
I'll be super quick, I promise. First, I just want to say a lot of us were at. Stop, Pat.
Do anything.
Gosh.
I appreciate what you said.
Whatever. Elizabeth, just, kindred spirit. Thank you. No one believes us when we say we're going to be quick. So first, I just want to call out, a lot of us were at the award ceremony. Your team received the team award, the Shining Stars, for this past year, and then Elizabeth and Allison, ELT member, Shining Star, ELT member, and Shining Star Employee of the Year. I mean, you women are amazing. And the team that you've put together and what you've done is incredible, and you deserve all the accolades. So thank you for this. As Allison, I don't know if I just am feeling a little bit extra emotional today, or if it's like the sound of your voice, if there's like a little extra clarity or something, but as you were going through the services that you're connecting people with and the milestones that you've achieved, I mean, like, this is so huge for Loveland. So thank you, because what you're doing is incredible. And I have dreamt of this day. I think a lot of us have. And it's amazing what you're doing in real time. And I mean, you just did it under the wire. It's incredible. So thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, Counselor Mallow.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Allison, seems to be your night, so you're on a roll. Going back to page 5, if you will, I call this the upside-down V. And for the people that choose the Seltzer route, you mentioned earlier that we've had some wins. People have availed themselves to services and want to take the next step into housing. Where I disconnect is usually where I've been from a involvement standpoint, Habitat, Housing Authority, and entry level is 30% AMI and then goes up. These people don't have an AMI. Where do they go?
Our goal is to make sure that each person is in the right kind of housing. So if somebody has really high barriers to housing, chronic and persistent mental illness or substance use, they are selected for our supportive housing. So the St. Valentine apartments are that. Right now we have 120 units of supportive housing in Larimer County that we have access to, 60 at Mason Place in Fort Collins, 60 at Red Tail Ponds. A few of the council members have been on a tour of Red Tail Ponds. We use that only for the people who have the highest barriers. Most of the people who have been housed on the number, on slide 13, 1,340, have been almost like through miracles. So we've received a great number of VASH vouchers, veteran-supported vouchers. We've received a fair bit of marijuana money to house people. We've received additional vouchers through the state through COVID. We received about $3 million in what's called Emergency Solutions Grant. Actually, it was more than $3 million, I believe. ESG, Emergency Solutions Grant, to get people housed. So one of the things that happens when we do have a disaster is that nonprofits have an opportunity to do their best work. And COVID was no exception. A lot of people got housed by just an incredible amount of money that we've been able to receive because the Northern Colorado continuum of care is high functioning. With that, it requires, depending on the barriers that somebody has and their personal needs, that they have somebody who is keeping an eye on them. Throughout all this, when we received some of this ESG funding to get people housed, we realized that that person or that couple or that family was not in the right kind of housing, and maybe they needed more support. And so they were moved either with a voucher or to supportive housing. We also had people who are in high-need housing who have recovered. They've reduced their substance use significantly, and they got jobs, and they moved out onto their own. So it's kind of a fluctuating pattern, and it isn't an easy thing to do. So really, kudos go to the service providers who work with people on a daily basis, and to the people who work at our supportive housing units who keep a very close eye on people daily to make sure that they're recovering from the issues that have resulted in their homelessness.
Let me interrupt for just 1 second. We've got about 6 minutes left. Is council interested in at least completing this item? Or do you want it to end at 10:30? Okay, so can I get a motion to extend through this item?
Make a motion to extend through this item?
Second.
All right, any discussion?
You're just going to take all the motions tonight?
Roll call on the motion to extend to the end of this item.
Fogel? Yes. McFall?
Yes.
Marsh?
Yes.
Mallow?
Yes.
Olson?
Yes.
Foley?
Yes.
Sampson?
Yes.
Overcash?
The
Mayor, the vote's 8-0.
motion passes, and I return to Councilor Mallow.
I was going to say,
Oh, you're done. Okay, Councilor McFall.
So I want to, first off, I commend you all on the work you've done. I think all of us have been hearing from the residents of the city that are letting us know, hey, it's nice to see it done down there. I want to take a different track on this. I know we've had a lot, when we first started this, there was a lot of concern that we weren't moving fast enough doing this. I know there were some areas that we looked at, and this may be Rod, you or the city manager or the city attorney on this one here. But, you know, the big aspect of this was, you know, we want to go this way because we don't want to have any lawsuits come in or anything else. So, you know, my thought is, have we had anybody come back and try and sue us for what we're doing right now?
I will try, and then I'll certainly defer to my colleagues. But we have not. You know, we one of the baseline pieces, and I thank you for bringing this up because I think that's really important, is that we didn't want to get sued, and we didn't want to get an injunction that would grind our effort to a halt. And so we have been very methodical. I think the path that we've taken has been really thoughtful and trauma-reducing to our campers, especially with the going through the hotel process, if you will, which, like I said before, we're winding that down, and really giving people a lot of our campers grace, if you will, and meeting them kind of where they're at and working with them. And certainly the police department worked very closely with us on that. And we're able to on a cadence, move people out on a consistent basis. And you can see by the numbers and what you've seen, we've been successful. And because of that cadence and how our approach was, that's the reason that we have not been sued because of that.
Fair enough. The other aspect of that is on the citation side of it. I know some of the concern was, you know, you issue a citation to an unhoused individual, you know, then they wait around for a while to get into court. They may not show up for court, so forth and so on. You know, I've heard the sheriff's department doesn't want to go tracing down trespassing on that. How successful have we been on that, and why have we been successful on it if we have?
I'm going to ask my colleague, Eric, to step up to the podium here and see if he can answer that question.
Chief?
So, I guess, yeah, this is working. So what's the question?
Well, I'm just asking, I know some of the concern on issuing trespassing citations and everything else on the returns out there was the fact of getting them into court and basically not having the room on the docket to get them there, so forth and so on. I'm just trying to figure out, you know, how have we been successful with this? Or have we?
We've been issuing citations when they're appropriate to issue them, and then it's just going through the court process. I think there's a 14-day return on that for them to actually go to court, and then it's just got to work through the system. If they don't show up, then there's potential FTA or a warrant issued. What's that? Is it 7?
I'm sorry, Chief. One of the things that, I didn't mean to interrupt. One of the things that we're doing is working very closely with our municipal court judge, Jerry Johnson, to ensure that we want to have a captive audience, if you will. So we've sped up the amount of time, and I believe it's 7 days now that she'd see them in court. So that's been successful, because if you had to wait, what it was at 30 days or
That's typically 30
days, sometimes 40 days, we lose those individuals. So trying to provide the citation, give them a shorter period of time to be seen in court, then we're able to not lose those individuals in the system, if you will. So it's been really a great additional partnership, if you will, with our municipal court judge, understanding that, you know, she's bound by certain things legally that she can and can't do, but moving that time period up has been quite helpful in our success.
Good to hear. And then the only other question I have on that is, what's the difference in the process with the large? It's funny when you say large hidden Because I'm wondering if they're large, how do you hide them if we know where they're at? How are they hidden? But, you know, is there a different process we're using with those, or what's?
It's going to get spicy.
This is a good question. There's probably one or two in particular that are very large that we're taking our time with because they are going through the court system. And so we want to be mindful of letting that process unfold. The individuals are aware that and have received several citations and have several court dates. So we're letting the court process unfold before we go in and actually mitigate the site. So the larger units belong to some longstanding residents that are not as compliant and have court dates that we need to let them go through.
Okay, fair enough, thank you.
All right, Counselor Foley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have to applaud you. I mean, the work that this team's done, and, you know, people have asked, oh, what have we done? This is huge. And it started, and no one had a roadmap on what to do. And we have slowly took a bite of that elephant, and I think it's down to a few T-bones now before we get it going. One question I've got is, you talked a little bit about the Cottonwood area and the adjacent owners. They did a great job of cleaning up, and they cleaned up their property. And what I'm wondering is if adjacent properties can have a resource that they can coordinate their own cleanup with that, so that we don't end up with kind of what we were getting emails about, which was a whole bunch of stuff to get rid of, which made it easy to get rid of. However, I think a coordinated effort would definitely make it safer for the public and the property owners as well.
Thank you for the question, Counselor. One of the things that we were finding is a lot of residents were actually were taking the debris that was on their property and kind of stockpiling it in a line near the bike path. And so what that's provided us is the ability to have our contractor who removes the large-scale debris to go in there and collect that. The problem is some of that stuff is very large debris and some of it is smaller debris. The smaller debris can be removed by my open lands and trails maintenance teams. The larger has to be done by the contractor, and currently we have the contractor on Fridays. And so sometimes what you'll find from residents is they may send something to you, for example, on a Monday. Well, we have to wait until Friday until that contractor comes up, is in the area to do that work. Unless it's a safety concern, then we act immediately and see if we can get the contractor, their availability to come in another day. But primarily, we do the cleanups on Fridays. And so I think there's an opportunity for us to work with the residents that are adjacent to Cottonwood Run to be able to help them with the debris that's left on their property. We just have to coordinate the timing of that.
Thank you.
All right, Counselor Fogel?
Has there ever been any discussion in your group about the benefits of requiring all commercial dumpsters to have locking mechanisms?
No.
Okay. Might be a thought. Reason I bring it up, I didn't think you had looked at it. Many cities are using, and it is an inconvenience to the businesses. But the bulk of the debris that you're recovering is coming from business dumpsters. And if those business dumpsters were locked during evening hours, it might be a whole lot easier to stop the flow than to try to dam the river after it's already in motion.
And absolutely, we can take a look at that, and I know from the Public Works perspective, they can definitely look into the logistics of that. One of the scary things about dumpsters and locking dumpsters, particularly in the winter, is sometimes homeless individuals will crawl into a dumpster to use that for shelter or to get warm, at least in another organization that I worked for where we had quite a bit of snow. Unfortunately, there was a horrible accident that happened where someone was trapped in there and ended up in a not good ending. So we have to be careful that we don't get someone trapped.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That makes, well.
it's a safety concern
It is,
to
it is a
an
safety
extent.
concern, I'm sure, but it's going to have to take, it'll have to take a city ordinance, because I'm not talking about just our dumpsters for the city. I'm
Correct.
talking about all the commercial dumpsters in the city.
Yes.
Many of them have locking mechanisms on them, people just don't use them. So requiring that might be a way to stop the inflow.
All right, Councilor Overcast?
Just want to express thanks to the city manager and your entire team. Job well done. You know, we got this started. It was pretty scary for everybody because we had to avoid some landmines, but at the same time to address the needs of our citizens and their concerns, as well as the individuals that we're trying to serve and take care of in the best we can. So thanks for a job well done. Please just keep it up, and I love the updates. The change in the format's been very beneficial. It's a lot easier to provide information to citizens, so thank you.
All right, question, once you have the railroad site opened up, will you continue to have the 2 tents in the back of the LRC? 4 tents in the back.
Right, there's 4 tents at LRC, correct. The intent is that the South Railroad site will become the primary site. So our plan right now is to move all tents over.
Okay, so then, okay, would there be any inside overnight? Everything will be at Railroad, everything?
We will use the LRC for overflow. So if we
Okay.
have bad weather, we're going to have to continue to monitor the number of people we're able to shelter at the South Railroad site, given that we've had up to 37. If right now we only have tent beds for 30, so we've ordered 2 more, which was noted earlier. So that takes us up to 40, which is what we have now. So we're going to have to be able to scale up, scale down, as was said early on. And then if we have overflow needs, we'll go to the Loveland Resource Center.
Okay, and kind of before we embarked on this, we had a lot of our local business owners coming in, very upset. Are we hearing anything that they're seeing relief, that they're seeing an improvement?
We get feedback, from people because, we're managing this, if you will. But certainly, from our standpoint, we are not hearing, and I can speak for myself, we are not getting the kind of feedback that we were getting before from businesses. I'm not sure what the city council members are getting from their constituency on this particular topic, but it's not as intense as it was before, Mayor.
All right, so no news or less news is better. Okay, finally, one last thing for me. You mentioned that you don't have PCs at this point. Is that a message we should send out, that we need PCs donated, laptops, PCs? No?
No, we'll get there. Our IT department has been exceptionally generous with us as well. I think we need to create stability at the Loveland Resource Center as well. So we need to make sure we have all of our policies and procedures before we really start adding stuff. We do have service providers who are helping people get jobs, so it isn't like that's being lost.
Would it be helpful to have a list that we could put out to the community of things that we need?
Absolutely.
All right. Jocelyn? Okay, we need to connect with Jocelyn. All right, Councilor
One last, if
McCall.
I can, they say imitation is one of the greatest forms of flattery. Any of our surrounding cities come see us about what we're doing to see if they could emulate what we're doing?
Greeley did come and visit with the DDA. The Greeley Downtown Development Authority came and visited with the DDA, first about our downtown projects, and they were also, they grilled several of our staff about what we were doing on encampments. So yes, the answer is yes. Yeah, they grilled poor Rod. He walked out, kind of
Yes,
exhausted.
I was there, yes, absolutely. I think that we've had some conversations, but not a lot. I think once we stand up the South Railroad site and that gets operating with a tent modular approach, that may change.
All right. Well, I don't see any other lights on. Thank you very much for a very good in-depth update, and thank you again for all that you're doing, making a huge difference. Thank you.
Thank you,
We
Madam
are
Mayor, City Council.
adjourned.
Thank you.
Safe travels getting home.